The former CEO of fashion giant Abercrombie and Fitch has been arrested on sex trafficking charges. Mike Jeffries was taken into custody along with his partner, Matthew Smith, and another associate. And just moments ago, the U.S. Attorney's Office gave us some details on the allegations.
The defendants would fly the selected men to Jeffries and Smith's homes in the Hamptons in New York City or to hotels around the world in such places as England, France, Italy, Morocco, and St. Bart's for the purpose of attending events to engage in commercial sex. But beyond simply hiring men for sex, Jeffries, Smith, and Jacobson used force, fraud, and coercion to traffic those men for their own sexual gratification. For example, as alleged, the defendants employed a referral system and an interview process that did not inform the men of the details of the sex events before they attended, including the full extent and nature of the sexual activity that would be required of the men at these events. They caused the men to believe that attending these sex events could yield modeling opportunities with Abercrombie or otherwise benefit their careers. Smith and Jeffries employed a secret staff to operate these sex events. The staff ensured that the men signed non-disclosure agreements and handed over their personal items, such as their phones, before the start of the events to maintain the secrecy of these events. The defendants caused the men to believe that not complying with requests for certain acts, sex acts, during the events could harm their careers. The defendants pressured the men to consume alcohol, Viagra, and muscle relaxants known as poppers during the sex events. And they required the presence of staff during the sexual activity and ensured that the men did not leave the sex events until Jeffries and Smith decided that the sessions were over. Also, as alleged, on more than one occasion, Jeffries and Smith either directed others to inject or personally injected men with an erection-inducing substance for the purpose of causing the men to engage in sex acts the men were incapable of engaging in or unwilling to engage in. Additionally, the indictment alleges on more than one occasion when men did not or could not consent, Jeffries and Smith violated the bodily integrity of these men by subjecting them or continuing to subject them to invasive sexual and violent contact by body parts and other objects. As alleged in the indictment, Jeffries, Smith, and Jacobson didn't just carry this activity on for a couple of occasions. Their sex trafficking and prostitution enterprise lasted at least from the end of 2008 until early 2015. During that period, the defendants hired dozens of men and transported them to New York and around the globe. They spent millions of dollars on a massive infrastructure to support this operation and maintain its secrecy. This included hundreds of thousands of dollars of cash for commercial sex, prolific amounts of money for staff to run the sex events, money for domestic travel, international travel, hotel rooms, services from a security company, and Jacobson's salary, among other things. Now, this investigation remains ongoing. Although there are 15 John Does identified as victims in this indictment, this interstate prostitution venture encompassed dozens and dozens of men. And I encourage anyone with information about this case, including anyone who was a victim of the defendant's alleged crimes, to contact the FBI.
That was the U.S. Attorney's Office speaking to us about the arrest and the alleged activities of CEO and fashion giant Abercrombie and Fitch, Mike Jeffries, the former CEO of that huge fashion company. Let's turn to CBC's Chris Reyes, who's been following this story for us, was listening into the news conference. Chris, what should we take away from this?
Yeah, I mean, let's go through the details once again, Natasha. So you were listening to Breon Peace, the U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of New York. He called those details that he just outlined from this indictment graphic, disturbing, that the crimes that they're alleging are violent and exploitative. The FBI representative who was also at this newser called these crimes disturbing, dishonorable, and distasteful. And again, let's name all the three defendants in this indictment. So it is... One second here. I've got Michael Jeffries, CEO of, who was the CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch between 1992 and 2014. Matthew Smith, his romantic partner, and James Jacobson, who they sort of paint in this indictment, Natasha, as the recruiter in this massive operation that, as Peace just described there, required massive amounts of dollars to prop up. And the charges are sex trafficking and engaging in interstate prostitution. And 15 John Does were identified in this indictment. And what was really interesting that Breon Peace later talked about during the Q&A portion of that newser is that they were alerted to these alleged crimes through media reports. And we know that in 2023, the BBC aired a documentary called The Abercrombie Guys, The Dark Side of Cool, in which many of these allegations were talked about. A former model from the company did come forward to share his story, and Peace said that they were alerted, and this investigation triggered through those media reports. And you already heard a lot of the details that are in this indictment from Breon Peace. But again, I guess what we should underline here is the fact that this was a massive operation, that it required, according to their allegations, coercion, violent crimes, and that it lasted for a long time, that it wasn't just a couple of incidents, that it lasted from 2008 to 2015. And this is a quote, Natasha, that really stood out to me from Peace. He said, "Powerful individuals for too long have trafficked and abused for their own sexual pleasure young people with few resources and a dream of securing a future in fashion or entertainment." And then he said, to anyone who thinks that they can exploit or coerce others by using the so-called casting couch system, prepare to trade that casting couch for a bed in federal prison. So serving that warning with this news conference that again, that this types of alleged crimes happening behind the scenes with powerful individuals behind it is not going to be under the radar for the FBI and for law enforcement in this country.
Okay, CBC's Chris Reyes in New York. Thank you.